Hello there and welcome. This is as always Mikhail or Michael speaking. And before I start this video, I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity, so thank you friends and have a blessed day. Now today's video I will start in Zaporozhye and to be more specific Rabotina salient, where as a result of successful storming operations, Russian forces were able to further expand their bridgehead within the village and captured those territories in the process. As you remember, the village of Rabotina has been contested throughout the last few months, with Russians continuously entering the village, but ultimately retreating back to the defensive lines outside of the village itself. But this time it seems Russians entrenched themselves within the village for good. Then from Zaporozhye let's move to Donetsk Oblast and discuss Russian advances in the direction of Novomikhailivka. As you know, for a long time Russians continuously battled within the village of Novomikhailivka and in its outskirts to expel Ukrainian forces from the settlement, but due to the fact that an important logistical hub of Ukrainian forces is located extremely near, which allows them to support Ukrainian formations already fighting in Novomikhailivka, stop them from doing it effectively. And perhaps in relation to this, Russians launched several attacks to the north of Novomikhailivka in attempt to reach the settlement from the north, capture all these positions along the road that leads from Pobeda to Konstantinivka, and attack Novomikhailivka from three separate directions. It is a bit too early to talk about this Russian gain here in this area, however, day by day Russians are getting closer to that goal, and as a result of successful offensive actions, Russian forces were able to successfully acquire those shown positions. As you can see, slowly but surely Russians continue to consolidate their gains around recently captured village of Pobeda. Of course, first in the obvious attempt to expand the buffer zone around it, thus save it from continuous Ukrainian counterattacks. And by doing so, they are continuously capturing this entire open area, advancing towards Novomikhailivka, Paraskoviivka and Konstantinivka. Now, there were also reports of Russians advancing further in the direction of Georgievka village, to be more specific its center, from both sides of this pond, but the end result of these attacks is still unclear, so I would suppose we should wait a little bit more. Funny part is that forward Russian positions were geolocated here in this area, but just recently pro-Ukrainian map had made an update and gave Russians those set positions. Again with Russians geolocated here, giving Russians just these positions, to me seems kind of weird, however very predictable. When it comes to Russian gains, this pro-Ukrainian map is extremely passive and very slow to adapt. Now, not only do I want to know your opinion on why that is the case, but I would also like to ask you to consider supporting this video if you liked it so far, with a like, comment, and of course, if you haven't subscribed, a subscription. Words cannot describe how important those actions are for this channel's growth. Thank you in advance for considering it, and let's move on. Then from here let's move to Avdiivka and discuss what has been happening here in the last 24 hours. Now, after fall of Orlivka, Russians consolidated their positions within the village, ensuring that any Ukrainian counterattack launched in attempt to throw Russians away from the village and recapture recently lost positions would fail. And after withstanding several of these kind of counterattacks conducted by Ukrainian forces, Russians are now actively storming the village of Semenivka, with those news being relatively fresh. At the moment, the end result of this storming operations is still unclear, but again, like I said in my yesterday's video, the fall of Semenivka is nearly a question of time, as it's being attacked from both of its flanks. Of course, technically its center is defended by those two ponds, but this is a double-edged sword. Because of these ponds, Ukrainians have had time to defend these force lines, and Russians, understanding this full well, attack in the direction of the remaining Ukrainian positions located in this general sector, and with them being captured, the village of Semenivka will be attacked from three different directions: from the north, from the south, and from the east, through these fields and along this road. And any counterattacks that our Ukrainians are currently conducting in attempt to stop Russians from doing it are highly ineffective and had not brought the result that Ukrainians were expecting. In fact, more and more reports are saying that Ukrainians are slowly retreating from the northern portion of village of Tonenke, with Russians advancing here and clearing what was Ukrainian positions just a few hours ago, And if we zoom in, we can see that most of the northern portion of the village is already within the gray zone, with Ukrainians maybe controlling 5 or 4% of the village. It seems that the Battle of Tonenke is about to end in favor of the Russians. On the other hand, situation in Berdichi remains to be the same. Both Russians and Ukrainians are engaged in heavy fighting in attempt to take full control over this village, but so far, a strange equilibrium is established, as nor Russians or Ukrainians are able to achieve their war goals. As these kind of offensive operations are conducted, as the fighting all across the front continues, Russians massively use artillery and aviation, with rocket artillery stepping up its game. For example, here on this video, you can see Russian rocket artillery Grad firing upon Ukrainian positions located on Avdiivka frontline. Generally speaking, this is the notion on both sides of the spectrum, as both Russian and Ukrainian media is picking up on the idea that Ukrainians are experiencing lack of artillery shells, while Russians have abundance of them. And as you can see, Russians are not shy to use it. Now, as I was recording this video, news just came in that Russians completely captured the village of Tonenke, with it now being in full Russian control, and this is reported by Ministry of Russian Defense. As you can see so far, it makes sense, as the withdrawal of Ukrainian formations from this village had been reported for at least few days in a row, and now it seems that those reports were true all along. Ukrainian forces completely withdrew from Tonenke, with Russians taking full control over this village. As you can see, the news are so fresh that Syriac maps had not updated it yet, but if we're to assume that Russians took control over those territories, this entire open area is free for the grabbing, as it has already been located in the gray zone with no Ukrainian presence. With it, not only Russians will be able to attack in the direction of Semenivka along this road, but also start direct assaults in the direction of Umanske. Now, of course, Russians will first consolidate their gains within Tonenke, will probably attack in attempt to expand the buffer zone around this village to ensure that the probability of Ukrainians recapturing or re-entering the village is little to none, and then launch attacks across this entire open area in the general direction of Netailove, Yasnobrodivka, and Umanske, not only attacking in the direction of those three settlements, but also to the flank and rear of Ukrainian formations that are currently struggling in Pervomaiske, with an ultimate goal to reach these spawns and capture those positions along the second Ukrainian line of defense. Again, I would like to know what you think about this possibility, but in my opinion, eventually Russians will have to capture this area to solidify the entire front line and attack in the direction of the third Ukrainian line of defense that is located further to the northwest of where battles are currently taking place. Then, at the very last, let's move all the way to the Liman frontline and discuss Russian gains in the direction of Ukrainian-controlled village of Terny. Here, Russians continuously advance within those small forested areas, and along this road, generally speaking, Ukrainians have constructed vital fortifications within this small forested area, and this fortification area is called Crocodile, or, as you could have guessed, crocodile in English, while this small portion of the forest line is called Dyatel, or woodpecker in English. And those two strongholds are currently being stormed by the Russians, with most of it is now being under Russian control. With their fall, this gray area will surely fall to the Russians as well, and the Russians will enter Terny, and will also gain ability to attack in the direction of Yampolivka. In any way, this is exactly how much territories Russians acquired within the last 24 hours, with of course the most important one is this portion of the front, as it is again located in the Ukrainian stronghold. This recent gain puts Russians at about 600 meters away from the first buildings of Terny village, and it seems that soon the fighting will reach the village itself. With this I end today's video, hopefully it was to your liking and was informative enough. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.